So we will move to Henry. And I think we just hand it over to Henry.
Awesome. Thank you again, Yunan, for taking the wheel there.
No problem.
All right. Can everybody see? Can everyone hear?
Yes.
Awesome. Again, my name is Henry. I was tasked with covering Delaware and Maryland, which is really exciting. I live in Maryland and I go to Delaware a lot, so I was really excited for this project. I think Sam already gave me a great enough intro. I wanted to give myself an intro, but yeah, my name is Henry. I'm here in Baltimore, and I'm going into my third and final year at the University of Baltimore School of Law. And I want to just jump right in. Just a brief overview of Delaware. These are just some simple stats from 2022 with just a population slightly over 1 million, a GDP slightly over 90.2 billion. But what I really want to point out here is that total land area is just over 1.2 million acres, 42% of that being located in farms and 28% located in forests. And then again, as of 2022, there were 2,150 farms controlling that 42% of total land area, which I thought was really interesting. And then over this pie chart on the right, you'll see that their agricultural output is dominated by the broiler, the chickens, poultry. That's a little over 75% of all of their agricultural output, but they still have corn, soy, and eggs as well. And so I thought these were just interesting things to maybe keep in mind for the rest of the presentation. First off, I want to start with Delaware's clean water and infrastructure. The Delaware Clean Water Trust Fund consolidates a lot of state funding to improve drinking water, but also stormwater and wastewater systems. And it does have an explicit prioritization for low-income and underserved rural communities, especially agricultural ones. These decisions for funding are made by the council, and they do need to take into consideration environmental justice, climate vulnerability, and a lot of public health metrics. This reflects a large policy focus, prioritizing resilient water systems in vulnerable areas that maybe see a lot of contamination, flooding, and deal with a lot of aging infrastructure as well. Next, just want to cover Delaware's agricultural land and nutrient management. The state has a lot of farmland preservation, a lot of nutrient runoff control, and support for new farmers in a lot of their sustainability framework. Farmland preservation programs help protect agricultural land from development. There are young farmers programs that help new farmers keep their land and be able to, I guess, fend off outside pressures from development and local like noise ordinances and everything. There's also a Century Farm program that helps protect farms that have been around for over a century as well. The nutrient management laws, they regulate fertilizer pretty much from application to when it would reach a water stream or a watershed. The primary nutrients they want to target there are, of course, nitrogen and phosphorus. Additionally, the state cost share program supports this compliance and also provides a little more economic stability to some of these communities. The same can be said for the agricultural production insurance assistance, which really helps provide to a lot of the farmers in case of drought or flooding or other environmental instances that maybe affect crop yield. It kind of helps stabilize those so it doesn't necessarily tank, a farm or an entire community from one bad season. And again, if I'm speaking too fast or anything, or if I'm not coming across clearly, please just feel free to let me know. I tend to talk kind of fast sometimes. And I want to go into Delaware's climate change and adaptation next. Delaware's legal framework does explicitly recognize climate risk and climate change, and it does so to specifically target wetlands, coastal zones, and a lot of floodplains with, pretty extensive planning and regulation. The Climate Change Solutions Act requires all state agencies to integrate climate risk into their planning, whether this includes carbon emissions inventory, climate councils, or resilience strategies. And the floodplain and wetlands protections, again, reduce flood exposure, especially for these rural and coastal communities as well. And the Coastal Zone Act limits heavy industrial development along sensitive shorelines, meaning a lot of those inland bay areas as well. They want to reduce a lot of industrial development, not only because of what they can pollute into water systems, but also the construction of draining and dredging and filling and whatever there that could actually disrupt the waterways. And I want to jump right into Delaware energy, utilities, and rural equity. Through these renewable energy portfolio standards and clean energy funding here, Delaware really does want to push a lot of diverse energy sources and renewable energy for the entire state, not just for the areas where the innovation kind of attracts to. It's for even the rural areas as well. They want to move everything forward. These renewable energy portfolio standards require utilities to increase their renewable energy use, and the Green Energy Fund really helps fund a lot of solar and wind and geothermal installations, again, explicitly targeting low-income and underserved agricultural communities. The CO2 budget trading program, also similar to the RGGI program, raises funds, but also ultimately aims to stabilize CO2 emissions and ultimately start decreasing them. And these policies aim to reduce a lot of rural energy insecurity and deliver a lot of green infrastructure investments to a lot of underserved and underrepresented rural populations. Next, Delaware has institutionalized environmental justice via councils and equity mandates across energy and transportation programs. The Community Involvement Advisory Council provides formal input from communities regarding environmental projects, infrastructure updates, and renewable energy. The green energy equity provisions require that a share of renewable funds specifically go to rural and underserved communities. And the Safe Routes to School, it aims to improve pedestrian access and safety in rural school zones, whether that's just the infrastructure for walking as well, but also if those paths are safe to walk in, if they're drained or not drained, if they're at flood risk and everything like that. So they a lot of these ensure that historically excluded communities, or just communities that are a little further out of the way, are still centered in these decision-making processes. And then just some recent legal action. I think some of these cases have been really important in Delaware. This Jennings v. BP America case really addressed climate damages and kind of set a precedent for people to be able to hold polluters accountable, even if they're large multinational corporations. The Greenwich Terminals case really just reinforced the Delaware Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control, or DNREC's, role in aquatic habitat monitoring and enforcement of TMDLs in the waterways. And these are just key rulings that kind of reflect the way that courts have been taking these kinds of questions and interpreting these issues recently, which I think has been very good for Delaware, at least in the last several years. And if we have any questions on Delaware, maybe we'll just hold until the end and we can just run right into Maryland now. Again, just want to start off with another brief overview of Maryland. Significantly larger state, both in population and land area, a significantly larger GDP. Similar areas or similar amounts of land split in farm and forest as well. But I want to point out that there is still a really large chunk of Maryland's agricultural output is based in poultry and these broiler chickens, but it's a little more diversified. It's a little less dependent. We have got a lot from corn, a lot from soybean and dairy as well. And while it wasn't particularly significant, I have noticed that in the last couple years, maybe last decade or so, a lot of Maryland's aquaculture has also been increasing. While crabs are still very expensive right here, but the oyster populations have been improving, and that has slowly begun to be a bigger part of Maryland's output. So hopefully that's something we can see in the future as well. Starting off with Maryland's agricultural preservation and stability, Maryland has a pretty strong focus on permanent farmland protection, whether that's through the purchase of a lot of development rights or tax relief for farmers. This strategy kind of recognizes farmland not only as an ecological asset, but also how important it is economically for these rural communities. The Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Fund, or MALP, as I've been calling it all summer in my head, it protects farmland from a lot of developmental pressure and helps preserve a lot of this land. The Rural Legacy Program funds conservation easements in ecologically significant rural areas. There's property taxes afforded, again, to working farms to kind of ease that burden and to incentivize land retention. And Marbidco supports a lot of young farmers in agriculture innovation by financing or offering grants to people who are innovating and really coming up with new, sustainable, and efficient technologies in farming. For Maryland's health and soil health and water quality, the state uses a lot of nutrient management and then cost share incentives and soil health programs to reduce pollution while still maintaining an emphasis on keeping the farm working and viable. The Healthy Soils program promotes a lot of climate smart farming, especially carbon sequestration. Nutrient management laws, again, target a lot of runoff reduction that goes into the bay. Again, most of Maryland, the waterways go straight into the bay, which is kind of the primary target here for a lot of these. The Agricultural Certainty Program incentivizes, it gives farmers a pretty big reason to adopt the BMPs or best management practices. The biggest of these, which could be up to a 10-year exemption from a lot of environmental laws and regulations that come out if these farms prove that they are adopting and maintaining these BMPs. State cost share program funds conservation structures and kind of stabilizes, again, crops. And then this overall two-pronged approach, supports Chesapeake Bay restoration and overall water and soil health while still supporting long-term viability for farmers. Maryland, for rural infrastructure investment, invests directly in a lot of rural economies through either dedicated funds for broadband and water quality and agricultural education. The Rural Prosperity Fund supports a lot of local economic development, especially in agricultural developments in rural parts of Maryland. The Agricultural Education and Development Fund works to educate a lot of rural communities, not only on, better practices for their farming, more sustainable and efficient practices, but also helps train new farmers when they're, starting farms and buying up land and everything. Water quality financing, the administration provides loans for small town water and sewer upgrades as well. And really, these targeted investments improve the resilience of rural infrastructures in the event of floods or droughts or other environmental instances. And they reduce, the disparity between rural and urban areas in these basic, infrastructure and services. For Maryland, they've embedded climate resilience into a lot of state planning by creating dedicated offices, commissions, and legally binding targets. Maryland's Office of Resilience coordinates state adaptation for climate change and climate risk across all sectors. The Climate Solutions Now Act requires emissions reductions and an equity-focused implementation of those. The Environmental Justice Commission ensures environmental burdens aren't concentrated in one community over another, with a special emphasis on rural communities as well. Maryland's ecological restoration, a lot of this comes through with programs like BayStat and the Coastal Bays Trust Fund, which are mostly focused on wetland restoration and forest preservation. Coastal Bays and BayStat programs will track and restore progress and the overall health of the bay and of forests to restore, their health in wetlands, streams, and forest systems. The Forest Offset Program promotes reforestation and carbon sequestration as well. And the Watershed Restoration Act links a lot of the state funding to actual measurable ecological outcomes, kind of ensuring that a lot of what government funding goes to in local localities is in line with the state's environmental restoration plans. And these are done with the goal of enhancing flood control, nutrient reduction in the water, and rural landscape stability. And then some recent judicial developments in Maryland. Just the Assateague Coastal Trust case, very interesting, expanded a lot of standing for environmental groups to be able to bring suit. Belleville Farms upheld a lot of farm easement enforcement, reinforcing a lot of preservation authority for the state. And the Matter of Chesapeake Bay Foundation case affirmed the state's ability to enforce the TMDLs, the total maximum daily loads that go from a site into the water. And close to wrapping up here. Guess I blew through a lot of that a little too fast, but Maryland utilizes a lot of smart growth policies, these best management practices and permitting frameworks to, I guess, kind of get the state's resilience goals to really go down at the local level. So the Smart Growth Executive Order links a lot of these these infrastructure funds to sustainable land use, kind of holding that if these communities want to use these funds, they have to go in line with the state's goals and use the top of the line or be in line with the state's goals. Again, these BMP standards promote a lot of consistent stormwater and nutrient controls from going into the water from agricultural lands. And the state wetlands and stormwater regulations protect waterways just from runoff and from sprawl and from erosion as well when people start to develop too close to them. Again, they encourage a lot of localities to align with their land use and their zoning laws with the state's preservation goals. And that should be wrapping it up from Maryland for me. But if there's any questions, please let me know. I know I left us with just a little more time here. And if you ever want to reach out, that is my email right there. I try to check it as much as possible. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Henry. We really appreciate that. We have maybe, again, we could take one question, burning questions for Henry, if you wanted to unmute yourself. Okay, I don't see anybody jumping on.